beneath the frigid, desolate waters of the Baltic Sea, where few have ever ventured, an object of unusual origin was discovered resting deep on the seafloor. It was perfectly circular, almost unnaturally so, as if shaped not by the forces of nature, but by the hands of a long-lost civilization. Every instrument sent to examine it malfunctioned. Every effort to study it was interrupted by an unexplained failure, and each setback only deepened the mystery. So what exactly is this object? Is it a relic from a forgotten culture erased by time? Proof of contact with something not of this earth? Or could it be nothing more than a brilliantly orchestrated hoax in an age of digital illusion? In today's video, we'll descend into the depths of the Baltic Sea in search of answers to one of the strangest underwater enigmas ever recorded. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's mystery. But first, legend has it, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. On a summer morning in 2011, a group of Swedish commercial divers made a discovery that was entirely unexpected. While conducting a routine sonar sweep along the seafloor, they stumbled upon an anomalous signal, one that revealed a massive object, perfectly circular in shape, lying at a depth of roughly 300 feet. Captain Peter Lindberg and his colleague Dennis Osberg stared intently at the radar screen. It was clear that this was no ordinary shipwreck, and it certainly wasn't a natural formation that could be easily explained. Rough seas had already made the journey longer and more fuel-consuming than anticipated. With limited time remaining, they decided to lower their ROV, a remotely operated vehicle, into the murky waters below. No one knew for certain what they would find. But they all understood one thing. If luck was on their side, they would be the first humans to lay eyes on a mystery that had, until now, remained hidden from the world. The ROV descended slowly, sinking through layers of thick, silty water. On the control room monitor, the depth gauge inched steadily upward. 60 meters, then 65, then 70. And then, without warning, faint contours began to emerge in the distance. A massive, motionless structure, nearly perfectly circular in shape, appeared on the screen. Its outline didn't seem like something nature would produce. The angles were too precise. The grooves etched across its surface felt intentional, as if carved by human hands. But just seconds later, as the ROV reached a depth of 80 meters, the lights flickered out and the video feed abruptly cut to black. The compass on the ROV spun wildly, reacting as though a powerful magnetic force was interfering with its systems, scrambling its orientation and attempting to jam its signal. The tether cable tugged tight, as if snagged on something unseen, and no matter how they tried, the team couldn't reel the ROV back to the ship. Then, suddenly, the visuals returned as the ROV dipped past the 100-meter mark. In the dim glow of the onboard camera, a strange formation came into view, what looked unmistakably like a stone staircase. Old, yet curiously untouched. No signs of rust, no algae, no marine growth anywhere to be seen. It didn't resemble the decaying wreckage of an old ship. It looked more like an entrance to somewhere. At that same moment, the ship's electrical systems, until then functioning normally, abruptly shut down and restarted themselves without any human input. Screens flickered. The sonar blinked erratically. It was as if the entire vessel was being manipulated by something unseen. No one from the Ocean X team said a word. They simply stared at the monitors in silence, because at that point, there was nothing left to say. For many, the discovery of a strange object lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea might have come as a shock, but for the Ocean X team, this wasn't the first time they had come face to face with the unexplained. Back in 1992, the name Ocean X first echoed through the European maritime community when the team located the wreck of a B-17 Flying Fortress bomber, resting silently off the eastern coast of Sweden. The aircraft had vanished decades earlier. No one knew where it had gone down. Yet somehow, this group of divers managed to find it. On another occasion, the same team became captivated by a peculiar name buried deep in naval history, Jönköping. A Swedish schooner sunk by the German submarine U-22 in November of 1916, while carrying a precious cargo of champagne and fine cognac destined for the famed Metropole Hotel in Moscow. For months, the team hunted for traces of the lost ship. And in 1997, they found it, resting more than 200 feet below the surface. The result? Over 3,000 bottles of vintage champagne and 14 cases of pristine cognac, perfectly preserved in the near-freezing depths for almost a century. The rare spirits were later auctioned off to collectors around the world. But for Ocean X, the value had nothing to do with the money earned. The real reward lay in the pursuit, the uncovering of secrets long buried by time and tide. And it was that same spirit that led them back to the Baltic in the summer of 2011. Not in search of treasure, not in pursuit of fame or recognition, but to continue an unfinished journey, to follow the trail of mysteries history had chosen to forget. In the summer of 2012, Ocean X returned to the Baltic Sea, this time with better equipment and a more carefully crafted plan. Their research vessel arrived early, carrying next-generation sonar systems and custom-built ROVs designed specifically for the most unforgiving underwater conditions. This time, they were determined to solve the mystery lying beneath the Baltic. But just hours after reaching the site, they realized that nothing would go as smoothly as they had hoped. Each time they attempted to lower a measuring device or underwater camera near the anomaly, the entire system began to malfunction. The ROVs, upon reaching the outer edges of the site, would suddenly shut down, as if some unseen force was interfering from beyond. Satellite communication devices lost power without warning, and control systems flickered out with no clear explanation. Frustrated by the non-cooperation of their state-of-the-art tools, the Ocean X team had no choice but to return to the oldest method in the book, sending their best divers down to see the object with their own eyes. Equipped with nothing more than handheld cameras and basic lighting gear, the divers descended into the dark waters, and it was through those unfiltered eyes that they witnessed things no geological map or digital dataset had ever described. On the surface of the object, they discovered straight grooves, clean, deliberate cuts so sharp they seemed to have been made by human hands, or perhaps by something even more precise. In several places, they found perfectly round drill holes, spaced apart in unnervingly regular intervals. All of it pointed to one conclusion: this could not have been formed by nature. Above the object, a dome-like structure protruded, resembling what looked like a control chamber. Below, a clear stone staircase descended from one level to another, evidence of a layout too deliberate to ignore. As the divers continued their survey, they began to notice more strange formations scattered around the central site: rectangular stone blocks, vertical slabs, and even narrow pathways that appeared to lead downward into the seafloor itself. No one could say with certainty what they had found. Was it a structure, a base, or something that defied every boundary of human understanding? When every attempt to probe deeper was thwarted by inexplicable interference, the Ocean X team knew they had to turn back before the risk became too great. But before leaving the site, they managed to collect a few small fragments, shavings taken directly from the surface of the strange underwater object. At first glance, the pieces appeared unremarkable. They were rough, grayish, and dull, indistinguishable from any other seafloor rock. But once brought to the laboratory at Stockholm University for analysis, the results were anything but ordinary. The samples were primarily composed of basalt, a type of igneous rock formed by volcanic activity. But that alone raised more questions than answers. The region of the Baltic where the object was found has no known history of volcanic activity. Not for billions of years, not since the Precambrian era, also known as the Proterozoic Eon. Geologists were at a loss. How could volcanic rock exist in an area long defined by its frozen waters and geologically quiet past? Had the basalt drifted there over tens of thousands of years on underwater currents? Or had it been brought, deliberately, by the hands of a civilization now lost to time? Throughout the analysis, there was no indication that the object had ever contained metal. No traces of iron, no synthetic materials. Nothing that could tie it to any known structure, vessel, or technology ever created by humankind. It was all stone, and yet it was stone-shaped, cut, and arranged with such flawless precision that it defied everything we thought we knew about the natural world. When the first images of the strange object began to circulate, the media was instantly swept into a storm of speculation, and it didn't take long before the earliest theories emerged. The most popular, and by far the one that captured the public's imagination the most, was that the object was a UFO, a spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin that had crash-landed thousands of years ago. At first glance, the idea may sound far-fetched, but when examined closely, the details seem almost tailor-made for such a scenario. A perfectly circular shape, a nearly 300-meter-long trench carved clean through the seafloor as though the object had skidded to a stop after an uncontrolled descent, a dome-like structure rising from the center, resembling a cockpit or control hub, and perhaps most compelling of all, the surrounding area appeared to emit some kind of electromagnetic interference, strong enough to disable modern electronic equipment. But, of course, not everyone was convinced that this was something from beyond the stars. Another theory, just as mysterious, if not more so, suggested that the object was a remnant of a lost civilization, possibly even Atlantis. The geometric design, the stone staircase, the buried slabs, and the sunken passageways all mirrored features seen in ancient ceremonial sites around the world. Supporters of this theory believed that the object was not something that had fallen from the sky, but rather a sacred structure, perhaps a ritual complex, built during a time when sea levels were much lower, only to be buried beneath centuries of geological change. And then there was the war theory, a more grounded but no less haunting possibility. According to this idea, the object didn't come from antiquity, but from the 20th century, specifically the era of World War II. Nazi Germany had been known to pursue highly ambitious military projects, some of which were aimed at developing advanced weapons capable of turning the tide of war. Some researchers believed that the object lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea might have been part of such a secret program. If the surface grooves were remnants of corridors and control rooms, then perhaps what they had found was an underwater communications base, or even an experimental electronic defense system, designed to scramble signals and sabotage enemy equipment. As waves of speculation spread, a quieter, yet more measured voice began to emerge from the other side. These were the voices of those who remained grounded. They weren't drawn in by the perfect symmetry, didn't see a cockpit in the dome, or a hallway in the grooves. To them, it was simply rock. And they asked the uncomfortable question, could all of this just be one massive misunderstanding? One of the most straightforward theories came from geologists who proposed that the object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea might be nothing more than a natural formation, shaped over millennia by ancient geological forces, or deposited there by the titanic movements of glaciers that once carved and reshaped the entire region. These massive glaciers could have dragged enormous rocks from distant places, distorting them in unpredictable ways. What appeared to be intentional design could, in fact, be the random handiwork of ice, wind, and time. Some went even further, suggesting that what Ocean X had found wasn't a natural anomaly at all, but possibly a man-made model or sculpture that had accidentally been lost at sea during transport and slowly buried over time. Then, when sonar scans swept over it decades later, the blurry, low-resolution images may have exaggerated every small detail, turning an ordinary object into an extraordinary mystery. More than a decade has passed since Ocean X first discovered it, and in all the years since, no explanation has emerged that could silence every doubt or earn unanimous agreement. Perhaps the object is nothing more than an unusually shaped rock. Perhaps it is the remnant of a civilization long forgotten, or the work of hands no longer remembered by history. But one thing is undeniable. It is the very absence of certainty that makes it so compelling. In an age where almost every question seems to yield to a simple search, the object beneath the Baltic Sea remains one of the rare enigmas that continues to resist understanding, a silence more profound than the ocean that conceals it. If this story made you pause, or sparked a theory of your own, don't hesitate to share it in the comments below. And if you'd like to keep exploring the world's unsolved mysteries with me, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. The next journey might be even stranger than this one.